A reporter describes Earth during the age of dinosaurs: lush, fertile, and full of life. A 6-mile-wide rock changed everything, hitting with the force of 10,000 nuclear weapons. 1 trillion tons of debris flew into the atmosphere, forming a dust blanket the sun couldn't penetrate for 1,000 years. It happened before and will happen again. The question is when. 65 million years earlier, at NASA in Houston, Texas, the team was talking to Pete, who was in space. He looked strong. Houston gave him their word he'd be fine. They got the coupling on the board and said they'd give him the go-ahead when it aligned. Pete's heart rate was rising. Truman, NASA's executive director, checked on him and gave him a Buffalo nickel medal, telling him not to worry, they had time. Suddenly, Asteroid started hitting, destroying Pete's aircraft and injuring him. The team lost contact. Truman asked the man called Stewart to replay the tape. They saw what happened and suspected a surprise missile attack. NASA reported to the president that the shuttle Atlantis had exploded. Truman quickly assigned 3 groups. Group 1, internal malfunction review logs in case it was a glitch. Group 2, NORAD, Space Command, and the 50th Tactical Track all space debris. Check, recheck, and repeat. Group 3, wild cards, any and all possibilities. He told Big Ross to call 11,000 people and ordered Walt to mobilize. Both agreed. At home, Dottie yelled at her husband Carl about his pot pie being left out for 10 hours. She demanded a divorce. Carl, staring through a telescope, told her he saw something burning in space, though he didn't know what it was. He asked for his phone book with NASA contacts. Dottie, upset, asked if she was wearing a sign that said Carl's slave. He shouted for the book and kept yelling after she left. In a car, a team discussed Space Command's report. There were no global launches. It could be shuttle debris or Santa Claus. Until they had confirmation, they moved to DEFCON 3. In the city, a man was riding a bike with his little dog, calling him Little Richard, telling him they were going to the top and talking about getting a motorcycle. People were reading newspapers. Richard's owner arrived and noticed everyone silently watching the news, reporting the shuttle Atlantis had exploded in space at 3:47 a.m. Eastern Time. Richard, the dog, approached a man selling toys and started disturbing him by biting the toys. The seller took the toy from Richard's mouth. The owner told him not to touch his dog, but the seller said he was biting his Godzilla. Suddenly, an explosion hit the city from the sky. Chaos followed, people panicked, and cars were damaged. Richard ran into a hole caused by the explosion. His owner, holding the rope Richard was tied with, shouted for him to come out. Meanwhile, NASA continued working to figure out what was happening. The city kept exploding, and people assumed it was a war. Some even blamed Saddam Hussein. Truman told his team to stay focused and map the trajectory. Though the team said it would take a week, Truman insisted on knowing whether it was over or just the beginning. General Kimsey called Truman, demanding answers for the president aboard Air Force One. Truman explained it was a meteor shower that had destroyed the shuttle and said NASA's 11,000 personnel were working to find answers. Truman called Carl, a retired Navy officer, and asked for his help. Carl asked for the first coordinate, 1239. Truman mentioned the FBI had located his position and seen the space explosion. He told Carl it was top secret. Carl asked if he could name it after his wife, Dottie, calling her a vicious life-sucking bitch from which there is no escape. Dottie, standing in front of him, was clearly not pleased. Truman agreed anyway. NASA's team continued capturing images of the incoming threat and presented them via video call to the president. In the room were generals and other officials. NASA showed pictures and anomalies, 1643, 1658, and 1700. The president, frustrated, told them to stop talking in code and explain clearly. Truman explained it was an asteroid the size of Texas. The earlier ones that hit Earth were only the size of basketballs and Volkswagens. He warned the incoming asteroid would end mankind. The president, shocked, asked what could be done. A NASA team member rushed in with a paper and informed them they had 18 days before impact. In the South China Sea, Harry, owner of a gas drilling company, was playing golf, hitting balls at protesters holding signs saying, "Stop drilling." Chick, his employee, asked what he thought they were mad about. Chick explained they believed oil drilling was evil, pointed out how much diesel their boat used, and added that number 2 had chewed 18 feet of cable the night before. Harry asked who to thank for that, and Chick said he only needed one guess. Harry immediately knew it was A.J. Frost. Harry stormed into AJ's shelter, where AJ was in bed. Grace, Harry's daughter, was also in bed, covered by a sheet. Harry, angry, told AJ he could do whatever he wanted when he owned his own company and spent $8 million on a contract, but not at Harry Stamper Oil. AJ apologized and promised never to do it again, which was what Harry wanted to hear. But Harry grew suspicious, as AJ rarely apologized quickly. He looked around the room, pulled back the sheet, and saw Grace. Shocked, Harry told her to call him Dad, as he'd asked many times, then told her to get dressed. He told AJ to stay put and left the room. Knowing what was coming, AJ immediately tried to escape. Harry and Chick discuss all their strategies for a near-Earth object collision. After 30 years of doubting NASA, today they're finally giving them the answer. AJ enters the room where Harry, holding a weapon, starts shooting at him. AJ tries to protect himself with nearby objects. The team and Grace yell for Harry to stop, but he continues firing and chases AJ, shooting him in the leg. Chick reminds Harry he's shooting one of his best crew members. Harry says he won't kill AJ, just disable him enough to make him work on one foot. Even when AJ confesses his love for Grace, Harry doesn't stop. Grace rushes to help AJ as the team informs Harry that a client has arrived. NASA proposes solutions for the 18-day timeline, but none are realistic. Truman dismisses the pitches, demanding a real solution. Grace tells Harry that AJ is her choice and he needs to respect it. Harry insists she must listen to him as her father and employer, but Grace reminds him she stopped listening after her parents' divorce when she was 10. She quits and walks away. As they guide the client around, Grace vents to Harry, saying Rockhound taught her about Tampax because he wasn't around. At NASA, Truman explains the asteroid situation. It's 22,000 miles per hour toward Earth, and in 15 days, it will cause massive destruction, tidal waves, firestorms, and a nuclear winter. They control 8 out of 9 telescopes that can spot it, and the president has classified the threat to prevent global panic. When Harry asks why, Truman explains they need his team to drill into the asteroid and drop a nuclear device. Truman shows Harry a drill based on his design. When Harry sees NASA's chosen crew, space scientists, he argues they won't succeed without real drillers. He demands to bring his own team. Harry and Grace pick the crew: Bear, South Dakota; Max, heavyweight; Rockhound, eccentric; Oscar Choi, brilliant geologist; and Charles Chappell. Grace suggests AJ, whom Harry initially rejected. Harry visits AJ, invites him, and though skeptical, AJ follows. At NASA, Harry explains the mission to the crew. Despite their shock, they all agree. Rockhound jokes about payment, calling himself the group's materialistic weasel. Harry tells Truman the crew agrees, but they have condensed ions, parking ticket amnesty, immigration favors, entertainment perks, and no taxes ever. Truman accepts some of them. The crew enjoys their perks. Later, they receive emotional and psychological assessments. The expert reveals all failed the tests, including one sedated with a horse tranquilizer. Truman, shocked, still approves the mission. In training, Colonel Sharp prepares them for physical and mental stress. They see the X-71 space shuttle, a top-secret Air Force joint venture, and begin practice in weightless environments and high-G simulators. Trainer Jennifer Watts teaches about asteroid gravity, and during her session, Bear and Oscar joke about her looks, prompting a blunt response from her. Truman outlines the full mission. Both shuttles launch Tuesday at 6:30 p.m., dock with the Russian space station to meet cosmonaut Andropov, travel 60 hours to the moon, slingshot around it, and approach the asteroid from behind, hoping the debris tail clears in time. Harry, looking for Grace, found Oscar and asked where she was. Oscar told him she was with AJ. Realizing his mistake, Oscar immediately regretted telling him. Angry, Harry went to where Grace and AJ were. From a distance, he saw them kissing. He calmed himself and walked away without saying anything. AJ then asked Grace to marry him, and she agreed. He put a ring on her finger. Later, Oscar and Rockhound tried to explain to Harry that Grace was old enough to make her own decisions. Harry told them he would deal with it later and added that his daughter deserved more than a roughneck. During the underwater training with helmets on, AJ started acting on his own and ignored Harry's command. The NASA team told Harry that if he wanted to send AJ home, now was the right time. Harry replied that he could handle it. He asked them to get AJ out of the tank. Once out, Harry confronted him and asked if he wanted to go home. He told AJ to behave, even as AJ tried to explain that the problem was with NASA's computer simulation, not him. Later, Truman, Colonel Sharp, and Harry had a conversation. Harry asked them to give his team some time off. At first, Truman hesitated, saying the facility was secure and it wasn't something they could allow. But Harry insisted, saying it might be their last day on Earth and they deserved to see their families. Eventually, Truman agreed. They all went to see their families. Rockhound took out a loan. AJ and Grace spent time together, talking about their love. Noonan visited his ex-wife and son. His ex-wife told their son that Noonan was just a salesman and asked him to go inside. She then told Noonan that showing up like this wasn't a good idea, as the court had set limitations, and it would be confusing for their son. Noonan handed her a toy aircraft to give to their son without mentioning who it was from. He told her she would be proud of him because he was about to do something big. Rockhound, using the loan money, went to a bar with the crew. He gave money to some girls, and they all had fun until a gangster arrived and started a fight. Eventually, they were arrested. While being taken away, they shouted to the police that they were astronauts and that it wasn't right to treat them this way. At Houston, they detected the asteroid traveling at 30,000 miles per hour, projected to hit East Asia in 11 minutes. They decided to warn the entire South Pacific. However, before they could, the asteroid hit and destroyed the city. Harry and Truman spoke in a room. Truman told him that he still remembered all the names of the crew who first qualified as astronauts. He also shared that he would have loved to join the mission, but his legs were damaged. Truman wished Harry good luck in Florida the next day. The news reported that the asteroid impact in Shanghai had killed 50,000 people. A French satellite tracked an object in space, and sources estimated the resulting tidal wave to be catastrophic. CNN reported live from Florida, stating that NASA was on full-scale military alert. They called the asteroid a global killer. The government remained tight-lipped. The Pentagon was getting involved in a major project with NASA, possibly involving a shuttle mission. Senior Pentagon officials refused to comment, increasing speculation about the severity of the issue. A special team of astronauts had arrived in Florida, and NASA was preparing for an emergency launch in cooperation with Russian, Japanese, and French space agencies, marking the largest joint space venture in history. Harry took Grace to a memorial spot, where names of those who had sacrificed their lives were written. She looked upset. Harry spoke to her and apologized, but she told him he hadn't done anything wrong. She said she loved AJ and asked Harry not to speak as if he wouldn't return. She made him promise to come back safely. They hugged, and she asked if he could also bring her fiancé back safely. The crew began heading to the shuttle. AJ and Grace said goodbye by singing a song. The rest of the crew followed, also singing. A general watching them asked Truman, "Is this really the crew you trust to send into space?" The President of the United States began an announcement, broadcast to people all around the world. He said he was speaking not just as the President, but as a fellow human being. He explained that humanity was facing its gravest challenge. The Bible calls this day Armageddon, the end of all things. Yet, for the first time in history, a species had the technology to prevent its own extinction. He urged everyone to pray and assured them that everything that could be done was being done. He spoke about humanity's thirst for excellence, knowledge, and exploration, and how all scientific progress, even the wars fought, had led to this moment. As people watched the brave crew on TV, many prayed in fear and hope. Noonan's son saw him on the screen and told his mother that he had seen the salesman. His mother looked again and told her son that he wasn't just a salesman, he was his father. The team was divided into two groups, the Freedom team led by Harry and the Independence team led by AJ. Before splitting, Harry asked AJ how he felt and told him to take care of himself. All the crew boarded their ships and prepared for launch. The Houston team confirmed all systems were ready. They ordered the crew to close and lock their visors. The Freedom shuttle launched first, followed by the Independence shuttle. Both crews successfully reached space. They marveled at the view. The Houston team reminded them that the Russian space station had been in orbit for 11 years, with one cosmonaut, Lev Andropov, aboard for the past 18 months alone. Lev, a colonel from the Russian Space Agency, contacted Houston and said he was ready to fire the station's thrusters. He was told to stand by. When the crews arrived at the Russian space station, Lev met them and stated he was in charge. He warned them not to touch anything. Lev took AJ to monitor the fuel gauge. The countdown had started. T-minus 20 minutes. They placed the Freedom team on the left and Independence on the right. As fuel began transferring, AJ noticed the pressure rising and called out, but no one heard him. Lev and the others were distracted, talking about a photo of Lev's uncle in the mirror. Suddenly, they heard a noise. Lev asked where it was coming from. It was the fuel. The pressure had climbed dangerously. When no one responded, AJ pulled a lever, damaging the system. Lev ordered everyone out as the fuel pod caught fire. Noonan asked about AJ, who was still inside. Harry said it was too late to save him. All the crew evacuated, but AJ survived and rejoined them. Lev reminded them that he had warned them not to touch anything. The next morning, the crew was informed they were now in the final hours of the mission. They received instructions from Houston confirming that both shuttles were ready to make the burn around the moon. Back in Texas, Grace watched the updates. Truman told her that if he were her, he would start praying now. Roger reminded the crew that this was what they had trained for. As both shuttles headed toward the asteroid, the crew was shocked by the visuals. The Freedom team was hit by debris and reported to Houston that they couldn't make it, they were going down. Houston acknowledged. The Independence shuttle was also struck by debris and crashed. Back on the Freedom shuttle, Max and Rockhound, Watt, Nguyen, Colonel Willie have survived and asked Harry if anyone was injured. Harry told them the other shuttle was down and presumed lost. They wished peace for the souls of their fallen teammates. The Houston team tried to re-establish contact with the Freedom crew. Truman noticed how distressed Grace looked and gently said it might have been better if she weren't there. The Freedom team began their mission by starting the drilling process and collecting necessary materials. Meanwhile, aboard the damaged Independence shuttle, AJ woke up and realized the damage. He found Oscar unconscious beneath him, but Oscar couldn't hear him. AJ then heard Lev's voice, and together they began searching for other survivors. They eventually heard Bear's voice, and Bear was overjoyed to hear them. The Freedom crew, including Colonel Sharp and Watts, attempted to contact Houston but failed. Once everyone was ready, they descended to the Asteroid Valley. Max operated the drilling machine under Harry's guidance while Rockhound took readings at the flat spot. When Max began drilling, they encountered an unknown material. Harry instructed him to continue until it started throwing out fragments, then told him to stop. Meanwhile, Lev told Bear and AJ that they were the only astronauts left, but AJ reminded him that they were oil drillers. AJ suggested using the Armadillo, and they proceeded to it. Watts finally reached Houston, reporting scattered video signals and their coordinates, approximate 15H32. They had electricity and antenna issues but had begun drilling. Contact was soon lost again. While drilling, Harry's team hit an unusually hard material that destroyed their drill bits and affected the transmission. Harry tried to get help from Colonel Sharp, who dismissed him, citing a report deadline. Sharp later contacted Houston, explaining that the drilling would take another 10 hours, 4 hours past the deadline, but received no clear response. Frustrated, Harry grabbed the transmission phone to explain the situation. Back on Earth, Houston reported to the General that the asteroid's interaction with the Moon's gravity had destabilized its rotation, affecting communications. They had 7 minutes of communication left and tried bouncing a signal off a Russian satellite. They also warned that in 12 minutes, they might permanently lose the ability to detonate the nuke. The General informed the President. In space, Lev asked AJ what he was doing. AJ replied that he wasn't sure, but he had to try something to save his friends. Harry informed Colonel Sharp that they were drilling into a metal he'd never seen, which destroyed 2 drill bits. They were only at 57 feet when they should have been at 200. Sharp contacted Houston again, asking for advice as they were nearing the time limit. Harry interrupted and insisted that they couldn't use standard Air Force protocol for this kind of drilling. Colonel Sharp refused to help and walked away. Harry angrily told him to go write his report, while he and his team would get the job done. Sharp shouted back that Harry and his team were NASA's biggest mistake. In Houston, General Kimsey told the President they only had 5 minutes left to remotely detonate the bomb. Despite Truman's objections, the President ordered the bomb armed. Grace, Harry's daughter, overheard and tearfully begged them not to detonate. The secondary protocol was initiated, and the countdown began. On the asteroid, the crew heard the bomb countdown. Harry shouted at Sharp to stop it, but Sharp said it wasn't his decision. Sharp told the team to return to the shuttle. Watts and Sharp discussed alternatives. When Harry tried to stop the bomb, Sharp pulled a gun on him. Harry fought back and demanded the bomb be stopped. Meanwhile, Truman secretly ordered the uplink to be cut. As the countdown reached 3 seconds, Sharp finally believed in Harry. He trusted Harry's experience and promised to his daughter. They cut the bomb wire just in time. Back on Earth, Houston confirmed the bomb was stopped at 3 seconds. Communication was restored, and Harry promised his daughter and the team that they would finish the drill. Grace was relieved to hear her father's voice. Elsewhere, Lev, AJ, and Bear watched from a distance. The Freedom team resumed drilling. Max reported they were at 150 feet. Rockhound, distracted, played with materials, and Harry scolded him to stay focused since they had to reach 700 feet. Lev, AJ, and Bear decided to fly the Armadillo. They launched nervously and were hit by rocks multiple times. Lev excited to assess the damage. They eventually landed roughly, Bear soaked in sweat from fear. The Freedom team continued drilling. Rockhound discovered a new material and began acting irrationally. Sharp diagnosed him with space dementia and warned Harry. Harry told Max to reverse the drill and pull the pipe out. Suddenly, the ground cracked, causing a massive quake. Max was blown away in the explosion. Harry, devastated, whispered to prepare the world for bad news. On Earth, media outlets reported a massive mission failure, with leaks from NASA and signs that this could be the world's final hour. NORAD tracked 4 incoming fragments, one hitting near Paris. Panic spread globally, and martial law was declared in 42 countries. The asteroid was expected to impact Earth in less than 4 hours. Truman and the General decided to follow the President's orders and prepare for evacuation. Grace confronted Truman, furious, saying her family was on that asteroid and she didn't want vague reassurances. At the Freedom Cruise location, the Armadillo team with AJ and the others arrived. The crew welcomed them happily and informed Houston that the second Armadillo had landed. Houston's team was also relieved and excited by the news. Truman told Grace that her boyfriend AJ was back and asked if they could drill 250 feet per hour. Grace confidently said they could do more. In space, the crew began drilling. Harry reminded them they needed to go deeper, another 250 feet. They started from 770 feet but encountered problems as the pressure gauge spiked due to methane gas. Harry warned them to shut it down, recalling they had lost Max in a similar situation. Despite the danger, AJ insisted he knew what he was doing and continued drilling. They reached 882 feet successfully, and the whole team cheered. However, Watts reminded them the mission wasn't over. They had to lower the bomb into the hole. As AJ did so, an explosion occurred, and he lost control of the equipment. Though they survived, they lost Gruber. Harry then ordered the crew to arm the bomb and prepare to leave. When they checked the bomb, they found the timer and remote trigger were dead. Houston confirmed the remote detonator was damaged, and someone would need to stay behind to trigger it manually. Since it takes 2 people to fly the shuttle, only one could stay. The crew discussed it, but no one volunteered. Lev expressed he wanted to go home. Eventually, AJ and Harry went down together to the bomb. AJ offered to stay, asking Harry to tell Grace he'd always be with her. But Harry suddenly pushed AJ back into the lift, sending him to safety. Harry told him to take care of Grace and said he always thought of him as a son. Back on the shuttle, AJ returned, and the team prepared for takeoff. Grace and Harry had a final emotional conversation where they both admitted their past words were lies. Grace said all her best qualities came from him, and Harry said it would have been his honor to walk her down the aisle. As the shuttle launched, Harry detonated the bomb, destroying the asteroid. The world celebrated their survival. The astronauts returned to Earth. Grace ran to AJ and hugged him. Noonan reunited with his wife and son. Later, AJ and Grace got married, with photos of the fallen heroes placed at the front of the ceremony. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the ride, don't forget to hit that like button, and smash subscribe for more epic movie recaps every day.